Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. We're doing it. It's happening. Thank you for being here. The video footage you can see over my shoulder here has been posted by UNWA, the massive UN aid agency that is being defunded by the U.S. and others. The footage you're seeing is, of course, of Gaza, of the genocide being perpetrated there. Unbelievable footage of the mass destruction. 60-70% of all buildings in the entire region have been destroyed or damaged. The damage and the amount of the tonnage of the bombs being dropped is greater than 3 atomic bombs. I don't know if we're up to 4. Maybe we're up to 4 Hiroshima bombs at this point. Anyway, I'm going to be getting into some of the amazing amounts of evidence that Israel has brought forward that UNWA, which they have successfully, it seems, gotten largely defunded. The amazing amounts of evidence that Israel has that 12 members, although that number has been decreased, were involved in October 7th. Just hordes and hordes of evidence that Israel has. Hashtag sarcasm. I'm going to be getting into that. Revelations coming out on that, which perhaps may not shock you. I'll be tearing apart Chuck Schumer. I'll be revealing something about the security bill, the Fund Israel's Genocide bill that Chuck Schumer and others are forcing through rather easily. I mean, it's not that tough to get Congress to support murdering children, but something about it that very few people are talking about. I'll be bringing you that. So much more. Oh, yes. And of course, the very large review, sorry, tripping over my sentences here. The DEA program, the illegal DEA program, to spy on and try and harm Venezuela. I'll be bringing you revelations about that as well. It's just a lot. It's a lot coming your way. So hang in there. Tie your pants on tight. If you have ties, do them tight right now, okay? Because we're going to be moving fast. Please make sure you hit subscribe, hit share, hit thumbs up. All that stuff helps as I fight mass suppression. Mass suppression against, suppression against me by the social media platforms. And speaking of that, it seems that the Instagram live feed is not working yet again. So apparently nothing going on there. All right. Anyway, thank you for being here. And so let's get to it. As I covered the past couple of days, UNWA it's UN WRA, that is a UN agency, but that facilitates and helps Palestinians get medical care, get education, and everything else. But what I think many people did not realize is just how massive it is. It is gigantic. It is over 30,000 employees. It is over 700 schools, elementary schools, etc., for Palestinian children. It is 9-something million healthcare visits a year for Palestinians. It is a massive aid agency that allows many Palestinians to live, and that is why Israel needed to destroy it. So they used the ICJ's decision, ICJ being a UN court. They used their decision that Israel is perpetrating genocide, or at least there's enough evidence to keep that case going. They used that as a reason to suddenly decide they had evidence that Hamas was part of UNWA, and UNWA therefore was part of October 7th. And so today, we are seeing, and yesterday, we are seeing the actual evidence that Israel has that that's the case. I mean, that's a huge accusation, right? That a UN agency was involved in the October 7th attack that has given Israel the reason to commit genocide. Apparently all you got to do is, of the 1,200, it may have been less than that were killed on October 7th. We know that probably half, maybe far more than that, were killed by the IDF. So, all you got to do is attack a few hundred Israelis, kill a few hundred Israelis, and that is justification for Israel to murder tens of thousands. Apparently, I didn't realize you get to commit genocide if that happens to your nation. But anyway, here is, and this is coming from Channel 4. This is not, this is UK television. It's not anything crazy lefty. It's not a radical communist news channel. This is just Channel 4 reading the documents that Israel has put forward as to their evidence that this UN agency took part in October 7th. Again, a massive claim that has caused the defunding of the biggest funders of UNRWA. And UNRWA has a budget of over $1 billion a year. That's how large this thing is. Many of the biggest funders have now backed out, including the US, Canada, UK. Belgium said they were going to keep funding it, and for that, Israel then bombed one of Belgium's offices in Gaza. Anyway, so I'm going to play a brief bit of this clip talking about the evidence Israel has brought forward of UNRWA being involved in October 7th.
The Hamas terrorist organization has been methodically and deliberately emplacing its terrorist infrastructure in a wide range of UN facilities and assets.
So, first of all, they don't give any evidence of that, right? They just said it. Israel thinks that them saying something as they commit genocide counts as evidence. That's not it. You just said a thing. You didn't bring any evidence.
But provides no evidence to support its explosive new claim that UNRWA staff were involved in the terror attacks on Israel, just stating, from intelligence information, documents, and identity cards seized during the course of the fighting, it is now possible to flag around 190 Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist operatives who serve as UNRWA employees.
So they've said it's now possible to flag 190 Hamas and others who are UNRWA employees. They didn't actually give any evidence. They didn't give any names. They didn't give anything. They just said, "Oh, we've found 109." And you're like, "Okay, so who are they? How do you know they're Hamas militants who are about to attack you?" And they're like, "Give us something." And Israel has nothing. But on top of having nothing, they're saying they found this from interrogations of Palestinians, which means torture. That's what Israel does when they capture a Palestinian and they quote unquote want information. They torture them. So this is under torture, which many studies have shown that torture gets you false information. That's what always happens because the tortured person is basically like, whatever you want me to tell you, I'll tell you. Say you're Santa Claus. I'm Santa Claus. So the idea of, oh, we just interrogated and they told us that they're part of the UN. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting that.
More than 10 UNRWA staffers took part in the events of the 7th of October.
So now they're saying more than 10. They initially said 12 UNRWA staffers were involved in October 7th. Now they're down to 10 or more than 10. Other estimates have said they're down to 6. But again, zero evidence of any of it. And one of the biggest articles that was connected to this, oh my God, we got to defund UNRWA immediately, was the Wall Street Journal article that has now been revealed, as I brought to you the other day, that one of the main authors is IDF, former IDF. So you're taking Israeli military writing an article about how Hamas is in the UN and took place on October 7th and publishing it as if that's fine. That proves something at all. It's former IDF.
Israel gave the document to donors just after the International Court of Justice in The Hague made an interim ruling on it.
Yeah, so I already told you about that. The interim ruling, of course, which kept the genocide case against Israel open. But, there you have it. Israel has zero evidence of what they're claiming. If they had anything, do you not think they'd be waving it from the hills if they had actual evidence? If they had actual proof, do you not think it would be plastered everywhere? There's nothing, it's classified. I don't even know if they're saying it's classified, but even if they were saying it's classified, bull. All right. You do not, if you have evidence of this massive claim that is defunding the largest aid agency in the region with 700 schools and 9 million healthcare visits a year, you don't just say, oh, we got secret information. We're not going to tell you. This reminds me of the WMD crap that was used to invade Iraq, right? Sometimes the U.S. would say, no, here's some evidence. And they go, oh, yellow cake uranium. Yeah, that's a thing. And that happened. And sometimes they would give you false evidence. Other times they would just say, we'd love to tell you how we know they have WMD, but we just can't. It's too juicy a secret to tell you the reality. We all know I hope you now know how much garbage this is, how many people are going to starve from it, how many people are not going to get any healthcare visits. But of course, on top of that, Israel is bombing the UN. They're bombing UN offices. They've already killed 100 UNRWA employees. That is the most number of UN employees ever killed in a conflict ever. And that's what Israel's involved in. Here's from the International Coalition to Stop Genocide, and I'm reading from popularresistance.org, a great website, great service. If you are looking for where to get your news, Popular Resistance is a great place to do it. They say that the International Coalition to Stop Genocide in Palestine demands full funding of UNRWA. Also, the immediate lifting of blockade of aid to Gaza and an end to military support for Israel. By the way, Israeli settlers, which settler is a euphemistic term for, occupiers who often are on a murderous rampage. But Israeli settlers attacked aid that was headed for Gaza, going into Gaza, and did their best to burn and destroy the trucks so that, food couldn't get to children. Legit. Food couldn't get. Can you imagine being so psychotic that you think burning food for children is going to make you safer or make you better off or give you more security? It is so aggressively disturbing what's going on. But yeah, the International Coalition to Stop Genocide in Palestine, also known as that's if you take just the first initials, it's I'm just kidding. They don't actually call themselves. I mean, they might, but I haven't been at the meetings. I hope they don't do that because that sounds unsettling, and I feel like you'd get a lot of spittle in these times of flu and COVID and everything else. Not a good idea. I would go ahead and say the full name, International Coalition to Stop, instead of bad idea. Anyway, they are calling for full funding of UNRWA. Meanwhile, the U.S. government is passing a bill, slamming through, nailing through, whatever other adjective you want to use, through a bill to send billions more to Israel, including, of course, bombs and everything else to Israel to facilitate this genocide. And here is some lovely video. Chuck Schumer, your friend and mine, Chuck Schumer. He's been a senator, and most people don't know this. He's been a senator in the U.S. Congress since 1904, and he is pushing for this bill. And let's hear his justification for why this genocide just has to keep going. We need it, man. We need more genocider. We need more hot cups of genocider. Don't we? Let's go, folks. Let's do it. Here he is on Morning Joe. Speaking of hot cuppa, Morning Joe, one of the biggest propaganda morning shows in the world. I'd say in the world.
We're at a turning point in America. This bill.
That part is true. We are at a turning point. The U.S. empire is being revealed for what it is, which is a murderous, blood on our hands institution of death and destruction, the largest prison state the world has ever seen, the largest military the world has ever seen, $1 trillion a year spent on military, which if you make $60,000 a year after taxes, which is an amazing amount of money to make, it would take you 16 million years to make $1 trillion. Actually, 16.666666666666666666666 million years, which is a lot of million years. That's how long it would take. And I didn't make up that number, by the way. That's legit the number. And we spend that on military. And so he's right. We're at a turning point. Sorry to interrupt so early.
We're at a turning point in America. This bill is crucial, and history will look back on it and say, did America fail itself? Why is it crucial? Well,
did America fail itself implies that America stands for anything other than death and destruction around the world. I mean, I love the did America fail itself? You know what they are failing though? Him and the rest, Democrats, Republicans, all of them. You know how they are failing Americans is not doing a damn thing for all of the Americans struggling across this nation. 2/3 of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. Almost 2/3 of Americans can't afford a house in the so-called richest country in the world. The tens of thousands of bridges are cracking and crumbling. The roads are collapsing. We've got trains that look like they're straight out of the Wild West, exploding every other day or derailing. This is a collapsing empire, and they are spending all their money on military. It's like a textbook example of how empires collapse, and they are not doing anything for Americans. So that's where America's failing themselves. So you're right on that regard. America is failing itself because these MFers, keep it clean for the kids, these MFers are failing Americans. Him and the rest of them in Congress, and there's one party, all right? Stop fooling yourself. Pretend this is two parties. One goddamn party.
If we don't aid Ukraine, Putin...
He doesn't even know anymore. He's just listing countries. We don't send bombs to Saudi. I don't know anymore. Just send bombs. Just kill people. Just as long as killing's going on, then it's all good.
Will walk all over Ukraine. We will lose the war, and we could be fighting in Eastern Europe in a NATO ally in a few years.
So this is hilarious that he starts. So this is a bill that obviously, obviously sends quote unquote aid, sends bombs and money to both Ukraine and Israel, the proxy war in Ukraine and the genocide to perpetrate the genocide in Israel. Now, he starts off by saying, if we don't keep funding Ukraine, Russia's going to walk all over it. No, actually, if you look at the peace deals that were going to be signed before the U.S. stopped them, Russia was not going to walk all over it. Russia was actually going to sign a pretty damn fair peace deal in which the Donbass, where there had been a genocide perpetrated before the invasion by Russia, by Ukrainian Nazis against Russian-speaking and culturally Russian people in Donbass. More on that in a few minutes, I think, if I have those tabs open. But that peace deal was going to be signed in a month into this proxy war, and the U.S. made sure it wasn't. And yet, here he is saying, oh, if we don't keep bombing and killing people in Ukraine, then Russia's going to walk all over it, and we're going to be fighting with NATO against Russia. Those are all lies, and they've been proven to be lies. Even the New York Times has shown that the amount of ground changing hands over all of 2023 between Russia and Ukraine is tiny on a map. It is a tiny amount of ground. Basically, they're fighting over inches because it's essentially a stalemate. And the only reason the U.S. really, people like him, maniacs like him, egomaniacal lunatics like him, the only reason they really want to keep it going is because to exhaust Russia's resources. And they don't care how many Ukrainians die. Hundreds of thousands, fine. Ukraine is struggling so much in this war that they're now, they have 45-year-olds fighting on the front line. Now, hell, I'm nearing 45, so I don't want to act like that's old. But in military terms, it is old. If you have 45-year-olds on the front lines, then you have exhausted your 18, your 20s, your 30-year-olds. You do not pick the 45-year. Trust me, I lay down on the ground for about 10 minutes, and the lower back is not good. So you do not want people in foxholes with lower back issues. You want to get your cream of the crop up there, but they've exhausted their cream. The U.S. has helped obliterate Ukraine's young men by creating this proxy war. And here you have this maniac pushing this.
Americans won't like that. If we don't help Israel defend itself against Hamas.
I love how he puts it on Americans. Like Americans want war to just keep going. Just endless war. Americans are all voting for this. Actually, 65% of Americans, 63%, something like that, want a ceasefire in Gaza. I think it might be higher than that, honestly, now. That was from months ago. But this is not what Americans want.
That perpetual war will go on and on and on. If we don't help humanitarian aid to the starving Palestinians in Gaza, hundreds of thousands could starve. And the border.
So there is in the bill, there is this little bit of quote unquote humanitarian aid for Palestinians that's added in the bill. But if you're funding and arming the genocide against Gazans. You can't put a little in the bill that says, here's some food packets and say, oh, we helped. No, that's not how it works. Yes, it's sure. I'd rather food packets get in than not get in, but you cannot use that to pass a bill to help fund and arm a genocide. That's what this bill is. This bill is a high five to genocide while being like, but also here's a food packet. For those of you surviving, here's some food. It is so ridiculous. I mean, honestly, it is a mass shooter going into a mall and, killing 100 people and then giving 5 survivors some cupcakes. Well, I mean, would you rather them not have cupcakes? What are you, a maniac?
Order. Everyone has said it's chaos. A speaker, you just saw Speaker Johnson. He said it's chaos. We have to do something legislative a few months ago. But what has happened, in answer to your question?
And he also mentions the border where, of course, the U.S. is, in terms of human rights, is egregious at the border. We treat people like utter garbage. But if you actually wanted to decrease the amount of the harm and the amount of people coming across the border, if that was actually a priority in your world, then you would stop harming Latin American countries. We have cooed every Latin American country that's doing well. We have attempted to coup the ones that are remaining that are doing well. The people coming to the United States, risking everything to come here, they're in the countries we've helped destroy. So stop destroying countries, and then you wouldn't have so many people trying to get across the border to the United States. By the way, I see Mayjest just donated $20 on Rumble. Can't thank you enough, Mayjest. For those of you who do super chats or donations, if there's a comment connected to it, I will shout it out. As long as it's over like $1. If it's a $1 comment, I mean, you'll get a $1 amount of attention. Am I right? No, that's horrific. That's capitalist. Terrible. No, that is not me.
Your question. So this is crucial for America. It's a turning point. History is going to look over our shoulders and say, did we rise to the occasion?
Yeah, it will look over our shoulders and say, you perpetrated genocide. You were funding, arming, facilitating, propagandizing, manufacturing consent for a genocide. 28,000 people in Gaza killed in 4 months. The average percentage of children killed in modern warfare is 6 to 8%. And in Gaza, it's like 45%. Over 11,000 children murdered. 100,000 people either dead, wounded, or missing. History is going to judge this. And not because you didn't pass your funded genocide bill, you piece of human dumpster fire.
To his credit, Mitch McConnell did. But too many.
All right, I can't do any more of him. I love that he's shouting out to Mitch McConnell. Good job, Mitch McConnell, the brain-dead Republican who the Democrats agree with on just about everything now. Isn't it great that Mitch McConnell barely has lived to see the time when the Democrats are just so excited to have him in office. They love him because guess what? They all stand for the same thing. Do you get how the two-party system works, folks? Giant theater, a massive theater. We're all in the audience and we're all sitting there deciding which one of the actors we're pulling for. You're pulling for Romeo or Juliet? I don't think that's how the battle actually went down. Was it Romeo versus Juliet in that movie? I don't know. I'm not a well-read man. I am not well-readed. But yeah, it's a giant show. And they're getting people to really spend all of their time fighting between Democrats and Republicans while they stand for 90% the same stuff. Okay, here's what I told you about earlier where I said there is something in this bill that almost no one is talking about that is very important. The one Chuck Schumer was just talking about, that bill. And deep in it, you have this little fact that Michael Tracy has pointed out, that the Senate National Security Bill specifically exempts funds for Israel from congressional oversight. No matter what goes to Israel, Congress cannot analyze it, cannot know what the specifics are. What kind of bombs? Is it white phosphorus? Is it war crime style bombs being sent to Israel? Congress is not allowed to oversee and analyze it. It says that any congressional notification requirement applicable to funds made available under this heading in this act for Israel may be waived if the Secretary of State determines that to do so is in the national security interests of the United States. Basically, the government can decide at any time we're not going to tell even Congress what we're sending to Israel. Now, you have to ask yourself, why is it that the U.S. government, the Pentagon, the military, even wants that in there? Why is it they can't even tell Congress what they're sending to Israel? Probably because it has to do with war crimes. Because they know Congress is going to approve everything to Israel. I mean, Congress voted 412 to 1 in the House to support Israel and to equate Zionism with Judaism and anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, which is utter garbage. They voted 97 to 0 in the Senate. So do you think they're not going to approve Israel's bombs and death and destruction raining down from above like some sort of end times? Ironically, it's the evangelical Christians in the United States who want all the Jews in Israel to bring about the end times in which the Jews will burn in hell. Thank you, evangelicals. I look forward to that. The whole burning in hell thing. You know, I don't do well in the heat. I don't even really like beaches, okay? Not unless I'm under an umbrella. So I am not going to like the burning in the fiery furnace of the hellish end times. I am not a fan. Okay, so I wanted to bring you, Kayla Johnstone highlighted this hilarious title change by by Washington Post. They initially had an article up that said, "Is America complicit in Israel's bloody war in Gaza?" Okay, fair line, right? Fair question to ask. Is America complicit in the bloody war in Gaza? And in fact, it's still propaganda because this is not a war in Gaza. It is a destruction, decimation of Gaza. It is downright obliteration of Gaza. It's not a war in Gaza. It's not two even remotely equal sides fighting each other in Gaza. It is just bombs raining down on children in Gaza. And I've pointed out before that the Hamas militants that are in Gaza, most of them are, where are they? In the tunnels, right? We've been told that a million times. Well, the type of bombs that Israel's dropping, almost all of them, don't impact the tunnels. So if you actually wanted to, if this is just about the Hamas militants, then what's killing everyone else have to do? Well, because they don't actually care about the Hamas militants. They just want ethnic cleansing. So that's why you do that. Anyway. So this says, is America complicit in Israel's bloody war in Gaza? They then they realized the error, and they changed the headline to, has the Israel-Gaza war changed your feelings about being American? Much nicer, right? Much more polite. You don't have to think about it being bloody in Gaza. Thank you, Washington Post, for updating your propaganda. We really appreciate that. Updating your propaganda. Very nice of you. Very well done. Okay, I have so much more important news stories coming to you right now. Because the United States has become, I mean, we have been for many years, but it's become more evident. The empire is revealed more than ever before right now in terms of what it actually stands for. And because of that, you have other moral entities standing up and actually kind of filling the void of some sort of vaguely moral voice in this shit show we call humanity. And one of those is China, which I'm not saying everything China does is perfect, but China's not dropping bombs. China's not committing genocide right now. And they're speaking out to some degree against this. So they're talking, here's China at the UN Security Council, and they're talking about the bombs that the U.S. has recently dropped on Syria and Iraq. They claim these are Iran-backed militias that they're hitting, But whatever the reasons, it is still, they're dropping bombs on Syria and Iraq. Now, the U.S. continues to claim we own a third of Syria. We hold a third of Syria. The real reason we're doing that is to stop Syria from having oil and wheat, because we want as many Syrians as possible to die and starve to death and die of medical issues and everything else. 94% of Syria lives below the poverty line due to the economic war perpetrated by the United States. So we are, I mean, really, we're committing a genocide in Syria as well, but, not as aggressively as Israel is against Gaza. This is coming from Decensored News. They say China told the UN Security Council that the recent U.S. airstrikes constitute a grave violation of the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Syria and Iraq. And by the way, I'm getting to how Biden has accidentally admitted that he has violated the Constitution. Biden has accidentally admitted that what he's done is unconstitutional. I'll be getting to that in a minute. It is on this same topic. The situation in the Middle East, continue quote from China, is on the verge of extreme peril. I think we're already there. But thanks for being polite, China. Who is creating threats, whether in the Middle East or elsewhere? Who is engaged in the excessive use of force? And who is misleading public opinion? The U.S. purports that it does not seek to create conflicts in the Middle East or anywhere else, but in reality, it does precisely the opposite. The U.S. military actions are undoubtedly stoking new turmoil in this region and further intensifying tensions. Underneath the rising tensions in the Middle East over the past few months, the fundamental reason is the failure to implement a ceasefire in Gaza. We call on the country concerned to demonstrate political will and determination, take more practical actions to safeguard regional peace and stability, makes less selfish geopolitical calculations, and play a constructive role that is expected of it. Anyway, that is coming from China as we, continue to have kind of a Cold War going on against China, while also realizing that China is pivotal to us economically. So we kind of want to create war with China because we realize they're getting more powerful than the United States. But at the same time, we're like, but can you keep selling us microchips? Because we're kind of effed on that one, if you know what I'm saying. So just as we try and manufacture consent for your downfall, can you just keep the chips coming, okay? Like a Tostito party. Keep the chips coming. Okay, I want to bring you, let's do this story real quick about how the largest CIA leak in history, the leaker, was sentenced to 40 years, and it was hardly a blip on the mainstream media's radar. And this guy, he in many ways, he could be put along alongside Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange for revealing to Americans what is being done in our name, the absolute worst kind of garbage and espionage and harming other countries that's being done in our name secretly. We're really never told about it or explained exactly what's going on. And he revealed so much of this to us. Now, I think part of the reason that people don't put him along those other leakers is, and by the way, Assange is not a leaker; he's a publisher. There is a distinction there. But part of the reason, I think, is because he claims to have, or not claims, the reporting seems to say that he did it not because he really wanted to make Americans aware of what was being done, but more because he was pissed off at the CIA. But I don't actually care for, his reasons. I think that as Americans, we should know what our government's doing. And he is one of several who have been brave enough to tell us, although now he's had his life destroyed, and his letters from prison have basically said he seeks to take his own life, or he's, wishes he had a way to take his own life. Anyway, this is Joshua Schulte. The largest leaker, or Joshua Schulte, I don't know how he chooses to pronounce it, largest leaker of CIA material in history, sentenced to 40 years in prison the other day. He was convicted of orchestrating the largest leak of classified material in CIA history, and he's 35. He handed WikiLeaks a trove of CIA cyber espionage tools known as Vault 7 in what federal prosecutors called some of the most heinous, brazen violations of the Espionage Act in American history. He was convicted in July 2022 of illegally handling classified information and obstruction of justice after an earlier trial ended on a hung jury. WikiLeaks began publishing the classified data from the stolen CIA files, the first of 26 disclosures. Now, what ABC News is not going to tell you in this reporting, and what mainstream media really has not wanted to make clear to you, is that this revealed a lot of what the CIA's capabilities are in spying on average Americans, but also spying on everybody overseas. Things we should know as Americans. We should know what our government is up to. But some of these things included the ability to listen to you via your smart TV, even when the TV is not on. So as many of you know, these smart TVs, it's, many people have them. Most people maybe have them, where you can say to the television, if you turn on this feature, you can say to the television, turn on, go to ESPN, and it'll do it without a remote control. So that means the TV, whether you turn on the feature or not, has the ability at any given time to listen to you. The thing is, supposedly, it's supposed to not be listening to you unless or at least not sending it online, at least not loading it to the internet. But of course, in order to hear you say TV turn on, it has to listen to everything you say. And it was revealed that the CIA can listen to you through your television, even when the TV is off. So, that dark TV in the corner, maybe you haven't used it in a couple of weeks and you're like, oh, that old thing, they can listen to you through that even when it's not on. So that's one of the things that the capabilities. But to me, perhaps the most important thing in the CIA Vault 7 was the fact that they have hacking software. And this shouldn't come as a shock, but, seeing the evidence, seeing the proof is always a big deal. They have the ability to hack into foreign governments or in a false flag situation, hack into the U.S. government and quietly reveal footprints of the hacking that point to another government. Like it'll leave little footprints, let's say in the Russian alphabet, so that people trying to find out who did the hacking will find tiny little footprints, fingerprints, whatever they call them in the hacking community, that show it was Russian, even though it was not. It was the CIA, but it's made to look Russian. And this actually fits perfectly with what went down in the leak of the DNC. As we were told, Russian hackers revealed the DNC leaks, blah, blah, blah. But the evidence that it was Russian hackers was things like, they largely operated during Russian hours, or like, it was the dumbest garbage I've ever heard. But then on top of that, if you actually followed the play-by-play, it wasn't a hack, it was a leak. Okay. I'll get to Kevin. Thank you for the donation. I'll get to your response to something I said in a second. But yeah, so this was a major leak. This guy's now been sentenced to 40 years. He's already been in prison for, I don't know, what is it, 5 or 3 years, or so, a long time. And his treatment is so horrible. It's largely solitary confinement. So horrible that he wants to take his life. And yet he's just been given 40 more. And this is what happens to those of us in the United States who dare to tell the truth. Now, of course, in my case, I don't have access to the information that would get me locked up like that, but he did. And, and we saw what they did to Chelsea Manning. If it weren't for a slight little quirk of the Obama administration, Chelsea Manning would still be in prison right now. We know what they'd love to do to Edward Snowden. We see what they're doing to Julian Assange. By the way, everyone watch that space. Keep paying attention to what's happening to Assange. It's quite possible he could wind up in a U.S. prison and you would not even know that he was shipped here. Okay. They're not going to let us know. It's not going to be hey, everybody, we're extraditing Assange. It's going to be you wake up one morning and you will find out Assange is in a maximum security prison in Virginia. That is what is going to happen. And let's hope it doesn't, obviously. But if it happens, that would be how it happened. Okay, let me get to Kevin real quick before we get to other very important topics, including the incredibly illegal DEA program that has been revealed. Okay. Well, let me say before I read that, I brought up that evangelical Christians, some of them, not all of them, some evangelical Christians, Zionist Christians, believe that Jews need to be in Israel in order for the end times to come about, and then have the Jews burn in hell. Kevin says, as a Christian, I'll explain, not defend. They teach that Jesus will return in the end times and cause the Jews to turn to their Messiah, saving most, if not all of them. Again, not defending, just explaining. So, but to explain what Kevin's explanation says, and again, Kevin, thank you for the donation, is that the Christians believe that when Jesus comes back, because they think he's already been here, when Jesus comes back, the Jews will have to be in Israel. So Jesus will then come back, and then all the Jews will suddenly go, "Oh, it's Jesus. He's our Messiah. He's the Son of God." So basically, they'll become Christian. So so the evangelicals believe that Jews get to Israel, Jesus arrives, a guy turns a cup of water into wine, water into wine, and then, man, would that ruin a party if he's turning wine into water? You'd be like, who invited this a-hole? All the wine's water now. I can't go through with conversation like this on water. Anyway, Jesus arrives. We all go, oh, we're Christian now. Jesus is our man. Boom. And then the Jews, my people, don't go to hell and burn in a fiery furnace. But if you don't do that, if you keep being Jewish and not being a Jesus fanatic, then you burn in hell forever. And again, forever seems a bit long. I feel like, could you make it like 3 billion years? How about till the sun explodes? How about that? Not forever. That's ridiculous. Till the sun explodes. Just give us that. And then, okay, fine. All right. Coming from the AP. So as you know, the United States has wanted to crush Venezuela for a long time because Venezuela, I mean, you know what Venezuela did to the United States. They remember back. So what Venezuela did to the U.S. Oh, so horrific. You remember because they had that, because hold on. They had a big cannon and were they the ones, hold on. Because you know what Venezuela did to us is I can't recall. Somebody put it in the chat. I can't remember what it was that Venezuela did to us that made us want to destroy all of them, even the babies. But the U.S. continues to try and crush Venezuela. I mean, the main reasons are because there's a lot of oil there and because they're outside of the petrodollar and because Venezuela is the threat of the good example. It is a socialist country that has things like healthcare. And the U.S., some Americans look there and go, oh, wait, you can have healthcare? That's a thing? And that's upsetting to the United States government, to our leaders. Secret U.S. spying program targeted top Venezuelan officials flouting international law. But there's a fair amount of evidence it wasn't just a spying program. It also was basically a commit crimes and try and blame it on Venezuela program. A secret memo obtained by the Associated Press details a years-long covert operation by the U.S. DEA that sent undercover operatives into Venezuela to surreptitiously record and build drug trafficking cases against the country's leadership, a plan the U.S. acknowledged from the start was arguably a violation of international law. It is necessary to conduct, this is a quote from the internal memo, so they did not want this getting out. Quote, it is necessary to conduct the operation unilaterally and without notifying Venezuelan officials. It was called Operation Money Badger, an investigation that authorities say targeted dozens of people, including Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. So they knew it was a violation of international law. Now, you guys are well aware that the United States sees violations of international law as like resume builders. I mean, they love them. At every moment, the U.S. is really excited about violations of international law. So I'm surprised that even we're bothering talking about it for a minute. But It was violation of international law to spy on these people. But on top of that, there is a fair amount of evidence that the U.S. DEA went down to Venezuela secretly, undercover, and tried to frame people. So they try and get Venezuelan officials to commit crimes that they can then go, you're committing a crime, and try and grab them or arrest them or whatnot. Now, in the case of Alex Saab, the diplomat, the Venezuelan diplomat, they were unable to get him committing crimes. So instead, they just arrested him for nothing. He was in Cape Verde, which means Cape Green. I'm pretty sure. I speak loads of Spanish. They were in Cape Verde, and he was refueling on his way to Iran because Venezuela works with Iran economically, and they got Cape Verde to arrest him. He was then shipped to Florida and held in American prisons as a political prisoner for simply being a Venezuelan diplomat, which violates all kinds of international laws, but the U.S. doesn't care because we're just trying to harm Venezuela. They were hoping, I think, to offer him some kind of deal that they could then use against Maduro. But ultimately, Venezuela was able to get him freed just recently, just a few weeks ago, in a prisoner swap where they gave over Americans to get him freed. But it was all a framing or an attempted framing. And the article says Maduro's closest allies have been targeted. Then a former DEA official, Wes Tabor, said, we don't like to say it publicly, but we are, in fact, the police of the world. Well, that's interesting. I suppose that's accurate if you look at U.S. policing as incredibly corrupt and brutal. Then yes, in that way, you're the police of the world. If you look at U.S. policing as something that entrenches a class structure, entrenches a racist systemic structure, entrenches a structure that harms and oppresses often the people with the least among us, then in that way, you are the police of the world. So he's accurate on those fronts. I guess, and as you can tell, he's excited by it. Okay, I am now going to bring you. I got to bring you Biden. This is video of Biden accidentally admitting, in a way, that what he's doing is unconstitutional. So I'm going to bring you that video right now. It's only going to be on my locals page and rumble.com/LeeCamp. Free to watch there. Rumble.com/LeeCamp. Join me over there. It is free to go over there and watch. By the way, I want to highlight that I have just put out individual clips of me destroying, obliterating Ben Shapiro, obliterating Rachel Maddow, obliterating Bill Maher. And those clips are on my youtube.com/moment of clarity, also on rumble.com/LeeCamp. Those are two places you can watch those clips. So if you like my segments where I totally decimate various, artisans of verbal diarrhea, those folks, if you like those segments, then I am put them up individually on youtube.com/moment of clarity, as well as rumble.com/LeeCamp. But now I'm going to go show the clip of Biden accidentally admitting what he's doing is unconstitutional. And that is over on Rumble and also on my locals page. To everybody on locals, I am going to try and bring you an extra segment today if I don't go too long with the regular segment. So if you're at locals, hang in there for the extra segment. Okay, let's do it. For everybody who's not following me over to Rumble, which I don't know why you wouldn't, it's free. I hope that you will join me 4 days a week. I am here free 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And then also Government Secrets on Wednesday, which is at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be doing that. So anyway, 4 days a week. You're not going to get a lot of times you won't get the alert. So just show up. 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Join me. And by the way, we're getting close we just topped 70,000 on Rumble. We're getting close to topping 60,000 on YouTube. So if you are on one of these pages and you haven't subscribed to the YouTube, please do that. YouTube.com/moment of clarity. It is over there. As I think you can also type in @RealLeeCamp. We'll bring you there as well. Okay, let's do it. Let's switch over the streams, which you should not do if you're a Ghostbuster. If you're not a ghost